Every week, I see new headlines on Google saying things like, Americans now believe they need $2.2 million to retire comfortably. Well, in today's video, I'm going to show you why this is completely false. More so, I'm going to show you why you need less than you think in order to retire and how to retire quicker than 90% of people. As the owner of an independent financial planning firm, I've helped tens of retirees make the transition into retirement this year alone and understand what they can spend each day and each year once they retire. Now, let me say this clearly. Americans are being intentionally misled about what it requires to retire. All it takes to come to believe this is an understanding of the incentive structures that surround retirement. So first, the financial services industry has a vested interest in scaring you out of drawing income from your investments and scaring you into working longer or retiring later. And this is because as long as you keep working longer and don't draw down your assets, brokerage companies have an embedded growth mechanism by charging fees on your ever-growing, untouched, or minimally touched pool of savings. The second thing to understand is that the media has an incentive to continue to prop up this narrative, and that's because the media makes money by getting clicks, and fear-based headlines generate way more clicks than optimistic, hopeful headlines. The third thing to understand is that just like the sugar industry or the pharmaceutical industry or the medical industrial complex all generate their own quote-unquote research that is used to inform, manipulate the public, so too does the financial services industry generate the research that is used to inform, manipulate consumers and financial advisors alike about things like the utility of asset allocations or the 4% rule or what real safe withdrawal rates are. And the fourth and final thing to understand here is that the government itself wants you to work longer. The longer you work, the more you pay in taxes. The longer you work, the later you claim Social Security. The longer you work, the later you jump onto Medicare. Now, this isn't a conspiracy, it's just a direct, logical result of the incentive structures that exist around us. My personal belief is that the better we understand the incentive structures within which we operate, the more difficult it will be to manipulate us. For the last 40 years, we have been manipulated into giving up financial accuracy in exchange for financial simplicity. Therefore, today, I'm going to show you a very simple case study that I hope will arm you with a better way to evaluate retirement. Now, this case study will illustrate how a couple can determine their appropriate retirement date and how much they can spend each year in retirement, as well as the dynamic withdrawal strategy that will put the power into their hands to determine their retirement success. So let's jump right into a screen share here. Steve and Amanda Zest on the screen here are a married couple, both age 62. They have 2 adult kids who are financially independent. Steve works as an order taker in a local warehouse and makes about $76K per year. Amanda has a small side hustle, tutoring local kids, and she makes about $20K per year. All told, they spend about $3,333 a month. You can see part of that comes in their pre-retirement living expenses here, and then their mortgage, property taxes, and insurance shown elsewhere in the plan. Now, at age 67, Steve is going to have a full retirement age Social Security benefit of $33.85 per month, and Amanda will have a full Social Security benefit of $11.21 per month. They live in Illinois outside Chicago, and they own a house that's worth something like $295,000, which you can see here, and it has a remaining mortgage balance of $41,000. Steve has $485,000 in his 401k, and Amanda has a small rollover IRA with $48,000 in it. So all told, they have about $530,000 in retirement savings at this point in their lives. They don't do much travel, they live modestly, and while they've been working, they've said that this is satisfactory. They'd like to explore spending more, but don't really know what that would look like, but could live in retirement on the same amount of money that they've been spending. Now, I built 2 financial plans for Steve and Amanda. In both plans, we estimate that Steve and Amanda will retire at age 65 and that they will live until age 95. Both plans also include 2 years of end-of-life in-home care costs of roughly $68,000 per year in today's dollars, as well as post-retirement healthcare costs of roughly $6,100 per year in today's dollars. Now, one plan, which is the one I'm showing on the screen here, uses a traditional Monte Carlo system for their probability of success, and this tool is called RICP. The second plan is a cash flow based plan that uses a tool called Income Labs. I'm going to show you Income Labs later in the video, but for now I'm going to show you how we're going to cross-reference these tools so that we can give Steve and Amanda a clear retirement date. Let's start by taking a look at the Monte Carlo scores here in RICP, which is also known as their probability of success. Now, according to RICP, Steve and Amanda have a 93% score. And a probability of success score tells Steve and Amanda how likely they are to live the rest of their lives without running out of money. But this is actually really an inappropriate way to think about probability of success or Monte Carlo scores in general. A better way to frame this score is the following. Steve and Amanda actually have a 93% chance of underspending over the course of their lives and a 7% chance of overspending. Or, said differently, Steve and Amanda have a 7% chance of needing to make some kind of spending adjustment in the future, and a 93% chance of never needing to make a spending adjustment in the future. As a financial planner who works with retirees every day, I can tell you with a high degree of confidence that a 93% probability of success is too high. A 93% probability of success tells me that this couple is likely being too conservative with their spending and will end up over-optimizing for their heirs rather than for themselves. From the results so far, I'm going to conclude three things. The first is that they should test scenarios where they retire earlier than the estimate in this plan. The second scenario is that they should test scenarios where they spend more than the estimate in this plan. And the third element is that they should test scenarios where they do both. I'm going to pause for a second and I'm going to explain two fundamental problems with Monte Carlo or probability of success-based tools. The first is that you plug in data and then the data assumes that you will change nothing over the course of your life and that whatever data inputs you put into the tool are the way you're going to live all the way up to the way you die, which is really just not how humans work. Humans change their behaviors in real time in order to respond to the changing circumstances around them. The second problem with Monte Carlo scores is that they always go up when you tell the tool you will work longer, make more money, or spend less money, which can be extremely misleading because the objective of a Monte Carlo-based retirement tool is not to achieve a score of 100%, but rather to craft a clear retirement plan that tells you as a retiree what to do in order to retire successfully. But a Monte Carlo tool does not actually do that. There are no outputs that tell you what you can spend, or when you should retire, or how much more you should save. Far from that. All you get is this score, which yes, has some utility, but far less than we're led to believe. So for this reason, we build Steve and Amanda a second plan in Income Labs, which I'm going to pull up on the screen now, which is a modern guardrails-based cash flow tool. We supply modern guardrails, this tool here, with all of the same inputs in the Right Capital Monte Carlo-based plan, with one additional input. We supplied the Income Labs plan with spending parameters. We said to the tool, if Steve and Amanda are comfortable with having a 20% risk of overspending or a 20% likelihood of having to make a small spending adjustment at some point in the future, what is the most money that they could spend each year in retirement given their accumulated savings? Now, Income Labs will then supply Steve and Amanda with how much they can spend each month in retirement, but also guardrails for their portfolio that will tell them when they should make spending adjustments and exactly how much to adjust their spending by in order to succeed in retirement. And you can see those here. So we're going to pull that up and make that bigger on the screen. So again, assuming that Steve and Amanda retire at age 65 and take Social Security at full retirement age of 67, Income Labs tells us that they can spend $74.90 per month or roughly $89,000 per year before taxes. Now, Income Labs also supplies portfolio guardrails, which you can see here. That's this lower dollar amount here, lower asset value and upper asset value, that say as long as the Steve and Amanda's portfolio value stays between $536,000 to the downside or $774,000 to the upside, that this couple can continue to take an income of roughly $89,000 before taxes and adjust that for inflation each year. Their lower guardrail would trigger here at $536,000, which is roughly a 23% decrease in portfolio value, and would result in a 5% decrease in spending, which you can see right here where my mouse is. Their upper guardrail would trigger when the portfolio grows to $774,000, which would be an 11% increase in portfolio value and would give them an increase in permission for an increase in spending of roughly 11%. This is a very human and functional approach because it tells us about the magnitude of a spending change that would be required, which also tells us that it's not huge. You can see here a 5% spending cut if you have a 23% reduction in portfolio value is not huge, and it brings the plan back to parity. Now, there are a few things that I should note here. First, Steve and Amanda are only spending about $40,000 a year right now as is. So an annual income of $89,000 before taxes, which results in roughly $78,000 of after-tax spending, would leave them a lot of spending wiggle room that could be applied to a range of things, including travel, personal spending, gifts, or charity, or not spending it at all. That's completely up to them. The second thing to note is that the more money you have saved, the wider your guardrails will be, right? So a 23% lower guardrail like Steve and Amanda have here is pretty reasonable, but say they were to have closer to $1 million in savings, their lower guardrail might widen to a 28 or maybe even 32% margin, depending on how comfortable they were with the risk of overspending that they supplied to the tool. And a third thing to note is that if Steve and Amanda said they didn't need to spend this much money, but would rather retire earlier and spend less. Maybe they don't need to spend $79,000 after tax. Maybe they're happy spending $60,000 after tax. Well, this Income Lab's modern guardrails plan confirms what we saw in the Right Capital Monte Carlo-based plan, which is that they could explore either spending more money and retiring at 65 or retiring earlier and spending a little less, but still more than they're currently spending while working. So the next step would be to use the Monte Carlo plan and the modern guardrails plan to figure out when their earliest retirement date would be. In Income Labs, we could pull their retirement date forward 3 months or 6 months at a time and see what that does to their safe annual income. And then they could make a retirement decision based on when they see their safe annual income matching with what they'd like to spend. Now, using both tools to help hone in on a proper retirement date, but also an appropriate level of annual spending is extremely helpful and illustrative. Clearly, Steve and Amanda can retire with far less than the $2.2 million that Americans think they need. More so, Steve and Amanda would actually have more spending money than they currently spend. They would actually have to go out of their way to find ways to spend that money, which is a great problem to have, right? To some people, that's a problem. To some people, that's a blessing. Whatever. One of the key things I'd like you to take away from this video is that we think we need more money than we actually do because over the years, we have been convinced to give up financial accuracy in exchange for financial simplicity, which is just another way of saying we have chosen to give up our influence over our financial outcomes. It kind of reminds me of this scene from The Matrix where the character Cypher turns traitor on Neo and Morpheus. Cypher is sitting with Agent Smith at a dinner table and he says something along the lines of, I know this steak doesn't exist, but when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it's juicy and delicious. And you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss. And I share this anecdote because, truth be told, it's okay to choose the route of simplicity and of ignorance. Just know that there's a cost to it and be prepared to pay that cost. Now, if you want to exist outside the matrix, outside of the pummeling doomsday narrative that keeps you from enjoying your hard-earned wealth, working longer so that Wall Street can have ever-growing fees without having to work for it, then a move towards financial accuracy will provide an escape. At the end of the day, we don't necessarily need more money. We just need a better plan. So, now that you know that there are better options to time your retirement, I want you to understand that what I've shown you today is just one part of the puzzle. It just illustrates this simple concept. The truth is, I meet with people every single week who thought they'd be working into their 70s and not spending even dribbles of their assets, only to discover that they could retire years earlier than they imagined and spend far more than they thought possible. So, if you want to learn exactly how you can fast track your retirement journey, I'm hosting a completely free class today to show you exactly how to do that. Just click the link below and register for free. Thanks as always for your time and attention, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.